I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about unlocking the resilient leader in you. Angela Skurtu says in her book that her ultimate goal is for every one of us to have a regular practice of deeply loving and accepting ourselves. What I loved about this is that it doesn't say, do only what you love or go after what you want. It says to me, is what it says is to love yourself deeply and accept yourself so that you can be yourself in the world. Deeply loving and accepting yourself does not negate others around you. Her first chapter has the following sections: perfectionism and the pressure from it, binary thinking that limits us to only two states like hot versus cold, criticism, the opposite of acceptance, and comparison, thoughts as if we don't exist unless in contrast to others. Each one of these is the antithesis of how we think if we deeply love and accept ourselves. In fact, loving and accepting ourselves is altruistic because once you truly accept who you are, the easier it is for you to give yourself to the world. And there's nothing selfish about that statement. Angela Skurtu is a master's in education with an LMFTS, a CST-S. Let me put it in English. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified sex therapist, and supervisor for both. She is known for opening bedroom doors, literally and metaphorically. She helps couples move from being great roommates to becoming great lovers again. No shame, no awkward silences, just real talk about real relationships. She's the host of the Open Bedroom Doors show on E360TV.com, where she explores everything from awkward first times to reigniting passion after decades of marriage. I'm going to bring Angela on now because you need to see her. Angela, welcome to Unlocked.
I really appreciate that intro. And I also, it's so funny to listen as I was like, oh, am I good at that? My first thought was, am I good at accepting myself? Is that strange? But it's like,
No.
my whole job is to help people love themselves, accept themselves. And even as I listen to you, give me kind of accolades, essentially, I'm like, can my nervous system hold space for her giving me kind words?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can, Angela.
It can, but it's just a funny moment where even I have to work on this every day.
We all do. We all do. And I'll tell you, I was going to also tell people about this book because this is where it came from. This book, whoops, let me get it on.
Okay,
from F no to F yes sex.
Yes, and you can find it at my website that's listed in below.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you read it. So I am curious. You're right. There was perfectionism. There were different things. I'm curious as you walked through and learned some of those things. What do you see in terms of how humans are using those same things, perfectionism and comparison thinking? How do you see in your world that people use that and it really hurts them?
Oh, it really does. I love to work with young people, young people in particular, especially in the teen years. Their whole identity is how do they relate? How do they relate? How do they relate? Are they accepted? And it just, my heart aches for them because I know they have to live through it.
Yeah.
That's part of maturing. But it's like, oh, can't you just do this faster so you can get out of this pain? And then, as you say, even after many years, you still every now and then say, am I really who I think I am? Have I accepted myself? Yeah.
Well, that's why it's an evolution, right? Yeah. So every day I work on it, and there are still moments where I'm like, really? Do I really feel I don't know that anyone's perfect at it. So there can even be perfectionism in accepting yourself that you have to let go of.
There you go.
To be
See?
for now.
You see? It's all settled now. Well,
Funny.
yep. Well, listen, you're a sex therapist. It sounds very exciting. Now, did you start out to know that this is what you wanted to do, or is there another story?
I was in college and I actually had no idea what I wanted to do. I was in that process of doing different degrees and, like, degree hopping essentially. It's funny. Initially, I went to a psychology class my sophomore year of college, and I was like, this is amazing. I love it, but it's going to take too long. And so then I ignored it and moved on to an English degree because I was very efficient brained. That's something that has lived with me for a very long time. That sense of I don't want to waste time or money. I want to do
Right?
this quick.
Right, of course.
And as you were talking about those young folks, I mean, think of like I think some of it comes with age and maturity. That you're like, well, some things can be done quickly, and some things are a process, Angela.
It's true.
Right. So then it took a little time, but after I was in college for a while, I was actually watching this really interesting show called Talk Sex with Sue Johansson. And she was a nurse from Canada who was answering questions from audience members about sex. And then she would actually test sex toys, not on the show, but like privately. But then she'd come back and give a little burkett, like 3 burkettes. So she was the original emoji giver, by the way, way back in the day, for like how hot the sex toy was or how useful it was. And I saw her and I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And it was after that point, I looked at whatever path I needed to get to being a certified sex therapist.
Fabulous. I think that's an unusual path that, because I often ask this, and I say unusual in that it was more direct than most people.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it took me a while to get there, but there was something about my identity that became connected to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say there was a story, like a more trauma story behind that. I was raised in a very conservative culture. I try to be cautious about saying which one, just because I work with all religions, all values. I really genuinely care about everyone. This particular religion was an extreme version within that religion. And so I've even, since then know people in those religions who've kind of evolved and shifted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was heavy purity culture. And there were a lot of women around me who were getting married very young. And then about a year later, they'd all call me because I still was that person that people would talk to about anything. I just have always been filterless. I used to say I was a therapist before I was a therapist. I just didn't really know.
I understand. I was a coach before I was a coach.
Of course, of course. Some things lead us where we're meant to be, right? And so, but a year later, they would call me and say, Angela, we're just not enjoying sex anymore. We're doing it because we were told to, but it's not fun. I'm not enjoying my experience. I'm now just doing it for him. And it literally happened like flies, one by one, a year later. And so that also was like complimentary happening
Mm-hmm.
while I was watching this Talk Sex with Sue Johansson. And I think just seeing, I have a very high compassionate heart. I care about people. And something in me was like, this is wrong. It's wrong that people are struggling so much. And we've been sold a lie. And I have a strong sense of justice.
Good, good.
And so I think it was a little bit of a mix of those things that said, once I realized that I felt like there was something in sex and sexuality that if you could understand this and help people create a healthier relationship with
Mm-hmm.
that, then I think that skill set would transfer somehow. I didn't know exactly how, but as soon as I had that sort of like connection, it was like, nope, this is it. This is who you'll be till you die.
Wow. Well,
And
you know
here
what
I am 20 years later.
what I love about that thread is that your decision was consistent with one of your values, which was justice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I work with people, I often say to them when they're trying to make a choice between things, so you've got to test them against your values. Because if you go against your gut values, it's the wrong decision. Because
How do you help people do that? Like figure out what their values are or test them against their values?
yeah, yeah, that's what I love to do.
Well, I'm asking how you do that because I'm
Um,
curious.
well, one of the things that I do is I have them explore their own lives through stories. So
Okay.
they may say, "Oh, let's see, let's talk about a story of a time that you did something you thought you couldn't do and you did it." And so they will write that story, and they'll suddenly discover there are things in themselves that were really powerful. I didn't
Mhm.
realize. And then the key is to keep asking yourself to tell those stories to yourself. I even have journals, huge journals. There are big ones and big, thick ones that are filled with my stories,
Mhm.
various times in my life. And what you do is, after a while, you kind of look at them and go, that's how I feel that way, or that's why.
Mhm.
And it's like a mirror to yourself.
Hmm.
That's one thing. Another thing I ask them to do often is to go to another person that they know
Mhm.
and ask them a question. And I give them different kinds of questions that they can ask so that then their friend, it becomes a mirror to them.
I gotcha.
And that's how they begin to explore. Yeah.
So it's like you're getting them to look at patterns across their life through their storytelling.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes yes, certainly you do patterns, but there's also sometimes a very specific story. We'll
Hmm.
say, that's why I do such and such.
I
I,
love it.
it's amazing. It's amazing. But, Angela, you talk to board members and executives and business leaders. I suspect you're not there to talk about sex therapy, but rather to talk about business. Uh, how do you approach your topic with them so that conversation doesn't devolve to jokes?
Well, that's an interesting question. So, just for listeners to understand, I actually train people both in sexual health and business health. And I've actually created a complementary model. So, in my business model, they're both a mind, body, heart, soul, spirit model.
Mm,
But one thing I learned as I continue to do sex therapy is that the same skills that I was teaching people in the bedroom were like they would get better at advocating for themselves, they'd get better at regulating their nervous systems and understanding how they work with others. And so the skills they were using to work with me were transferring into their businesses and in
mhm,
their leadership circles. And that was when I realized there's complementary stuff going on, right? Like I'm teaching collaborative negotiation. I'm teaching people how to read different personality types and be more flexible. And so the business model is called Built to Last. And I have shifted the language a little bit for the business room, for the boardroom versus the bedroom. But I follow that same structure of mind, body, heart, soul, and spirit, and teaching people how to work with all of those facets of themselves. And to answer your question further, we're not actually talking about sex in the boardroom. We're talking about communication skills
yeah.
and nervous system regulation and certain personality types that they all fall in that can be either complementary or contrasting if not worked with properly. I use a metaphor of gardening. Are you a gardener at all by
As
any
a matter of
chance?
fact, I am, and I use metaphors of gardens as well. Tell me some that you use.
So I have created an AI garden currently. I don't have a picture, but I can send you some pictures if you want. And when I created this AI garden, all that means is I was digging into AI and playing with what plants work well with my area,
Mhm.
how to format them so that when I till them under, they're actually giving more nutrients into the soil.
Beautiful.
I do mound gardening, which means there's companion plants that work together. And so I was researching that. And the metaphor I use is that in business, there are certain personality types. I've actually coded them to about 4 to keep it easy for business owners. And what you essentially want to do is have companion plants working together. That way, like that whole competition thing, everybody's heard, oh, I don't want to have a competition. I don't have a competition, but it's actually a scarcity mindset. If
Yeah.
you think of it like a garden where you plant things appropriately, you can actually be having 3 or 4 different plants in the same soil, fueling that system with their
They're
different nutrient
actually they're
bases.
actually cooperating with one another,
Yep.
which is exactly what Darwin, by the way, observed.
Hmm.
Competition was not his big thing. It was collaboration.
Well,
See?
here's an example in the leadership. So I'm in the leadership of some organizations for my field, right? And so in my own organization, sometimes people will say, oh, how can we offer CEUs when we have business partners who are offering CEUs too? That's a competition mindset. But when I invited them to think companion plant style, it's like, wait, what if we could offer a space for them to do CEUs with us? So we're creating the CEUs for our professionals, but they're also getting, like, they're getting paid and we're getting paid for evergreen content that trains our whole profession. If you're collaborative mindset, then you work together and you find a way to improve the soil as a team. If you're competition, it's like, oh, it can only be them or us. We can't be in the same row. And that's just not true. I have broccoli and green onions and lettuce in the same mound working together in
And
harmony.
you may even plant some marigolds around the edge.
Exactly, exactly. Now there are some plants that you need to have, like they might need bigger containers. Like I have a pumpkin patch in my backyard that, like, there's that needs to be in its own space.
Oh, yes.
But
Oh,
even understanding certain personality types, like this is a personality that needs to be contained and then just let them run. But
but
like
you know,
even understanding that,
the
huh?
interesting thing, Angela, is that in the Native American culture,
Mhm.
the pumpkins and squash were planted in the cornfields so they could sprawl if they wanted to in
Yeah.
amongst the corn stalks.
Oh,
Again, cooperation. I love this. You have taken the gardening metaphors even deeper than I have. So thank you for that.
well, great. I hope you can gain some help there. I love gardening. I will say that throughout my life, I have connected to gardening through trauma. Like I actually, as I've worked through trauma, I feel like it's like weeding out roots and like getting rid of things. But I always refer to some of my religious trauma as my tree trunk of trauma because it takes a little more digging to get some of that out.
Yes. Yeah.
But I do believe you can make change. Like it's funny, even that. I mean, I know we weren't necessarily planning to talk about religion, but I've really grown in my connection to religion over time too. It used to be, oh, I can never talk about it. I can't connect to it. But like my job is to work with people of all values, different connections, different religions, and so I think that in working on my own trauma, I've been able to develop a healthy relationship with people's religion and not feel like it's this, I can't work with you at all. It's a, no, okay, I can, we can coexist. And actually,
Hmm.
there's a lot of people in different religions that are doing helpful things. And so it's just, I don't know, like all of these kind of are coming into connection for me.
Yeah.
And that, like, kind of going back to the book, one thing I talk about is neutralizing your relationship with sex. Well, that neutralizing idea I'm using across multiple platforms. Like, how do I neutralize my relationship with religion? How do I neutralize my relationship with AI? How do I neutralize my relationship with anything? See it as a tool. And
Hmm.
just like any tool, it can be used for good or for not based on the person and how
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
picking up that tool.
Cool. Well, one of the areas that crosses all boundaries, really, is the communication between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, if you're talking about, well, no, I won't say that. I take that back. It's no longer the case. I was, I'll just edit that piece out. I
Okay.
think one of the additional challenges is, is is the communication between men and women. I was thinking about these women who a year later came back and said, "I'm not enjoying."
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that aspect, and is it really just about how people talk about the different ways that people approach not necessarily that subject, but any subject, and their communication approaches?
Yeah. So I'll go back to that book and how I talked about neutralizing thoughts, because that's what that book was all about. It's about neutralizing your
Mhm.
mind. So I think when sex has become this terrifying or uncomfortable thing in the body, it becomes harder to talk about it. So if you think of this like sympathetic nervous system, right? So if sex is coded in your body as a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, then people will address it using whatever coping technique that they use in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? So some women, for example, have learned to have a very strong fawn response, and those women were essentially fawning, right? They were just having sex for their husband.
Mm.
They put themselves completely aside. Um, and it became a survival tactic for marriage because they had been taught that this is what you're supposed to do. And even though their bodies and minds said, no, I'm not interested in sex and I don't enjoy this, instead of being able to communicate, hey, this could actually make this more enjoyable for me, they went right into shame because how dare I not like this thing I was supposed to like? And then their
Mhm.
natural fawn response. And everybody has developed a different, like we have access to all of those coping techniques. You can fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But if you think of how people survive in this world, everybody learns different ways to survive, and your body basically starts to develop patterns of survival. And if fawning is one of the more common patterns in your life, then you're going to have that's the one that's going to show up in sex. And so those women were in the fawning coping response. Does that make sense?
It does indeed. It does indeed. And what I love about this conversation is that we're really talking about the fact that we are humans in all of our interactions.
Yes.
And we sometimes forget that when we step into, especially when we step into business. I'll never forget one time I was working with just a delightful guy, and he and I were doing a presentation to a group, and we talked about the fact that you don't even mention that you have children in the business world, when in fact children are really important to you. And that began a nice conversation about how we leave so much of it, of our lives, outside. So
Yeah. One thing I typically say is same nervous system, different contexts, right? So
yes.
if you're a fawner in intimacy or in any sort of like context where you're trying to protect yourself, then if you're in a business situation where you feel the need to protect yourself, that same fawn response,
Mm,
people pleasing,
yeah.
over emphasizing other people's needs over your own, then that's going to show up in business too.
Mm, that's that's scary.
It's scary. Tell me why. I love it when brains do this. So pick apart
Yeah,
your brain with me,
yeah.
please.
Because I'm thinking to myself, those women, if they ever went into the workforce, would tend to fawn
Mhm.
when they hit aggression or pushback, because that's what they are doing all the time. And then they are accused of not being competitive enough, not being assertive enough. Uh, and flip the coin, if they overcome that and
Mhm.
they learn to be assertive, then men who are accustomed to fawning women have difficulty.
Well, here's where that shows up, EMS world and police officers. So if you put women in context with a lot of men, you'll find their fight response gets stronger because they have to cope with that context, right? And I've had women who've actually, so I open every door, right? So I've had women who were females in those contexts here working on sex therapy. And what you'll find is they struggle with vulnerability because they needed to cope with a work situation
Wow.
where if they were vulnerable, they'd look weak and it was unsafe. So that same work context, coping strategy now transfers into the bedroom when, well, it's meant to be a space to be vulnerable, to share, to open up, but they were basically transferring this same like, no, I have to be tough. I can't let my guard down, and it was impacting them in the bedroom.
Interesting. Hmm.
I know, just let it sit for a bit. You're like, holy
Yeah.
cow, it's the same nervous system. It doesn't matter what context.
Ah, yeah. It reminds me of the fact that almost everything about our bodies and the organic world is that it is uh, incremental. It, okay, physics it might be at the atomic level it might be different, but when you start putting everything together as a system, it tends to be organic and it tends to be incremental. Hmm. I like that language for even myself. Thank you. Good.
Well, I'll bring this back to my model.
Oh yeah.
So the first book was about the mind, but I wasn't sure where it was going to go. I just about a year and a half ago, I rebranded to Open Bedroom Doors, and it almost felt like giving birth. Like all these ideas, all this stuff I have been working on for 20 years just started to like come together in like this big a burst of solar system energy, whatever you want to call it. And I created the brand. So I created the book series, I created the show, I changed the website, like I changed everything. So it's like, no, that's what I do. This is who I am. It's like I created the soul of my business.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is after doing that, then everything started to reveal itself. So it starts, of course, I started with the mind with that first book, because I think that's the safest first step into sexuality, is examining how I've thought about things, what's in there, like opening a clinical book on yourself. But now I'm working on the body book, and that's out with beta readers right now. And in the body, it's all nervous system work. So I was noticing different like variants in terms of neurodivergence, how some people feel things more intensely, some people more muted. But like in that process, I learned, oh, we've got to neutralize our sensational connection to the body, because there's a way that people code those nervous system responses. I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, when really there's just human variance. And so in the book, I'm teaching people to reconnect to their body sensation exactly as it is. No judgments, no pushing you towards this or that, but like, okay, here's how my body works. Now, how do I develop a system to work with my emotional process? And then as that moved, then the bigger model unfolded. And it was like, oh, there's a heart piece, Angela. It's not just about their mind-body connection, but it's mind-body-heart. Because if you think of how couples relate and talk and build trust, there's a piece to that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's the next book. And when you and I emailed, I was only there. And I was like, yeah, it's a mind-body-heart model. But then as I've built and evolved and tested this on different groups, I realized that there's a soul piece too. And that's linked to our identity. So as you move through the process, you start to realize that we're essentially leaning into our sexual identity. This is who I am. I'm becoming a sexual person, and I accept myself for who I am. And then I thought it would end there, but I was wrong. The final piece was spirit.
Yeah.
And I thought of, this will probably connect you back to some of your grad school roots, but remember kind of psychoanalysis and looking at like how trauma lasts over time, but love lasts over time too, right? So each one of us is leaving essentially a legacy of love or trauma, or, like think of what your parents left you. My grandparents, I wrote about in my first book, they left a legacy of a long lasting love. And so each one of us humans essentially is leaving a legacy. And that the end of the model to me is teaching people how to mentor, how to lead in love, and how to really think about the legacy you leave behind, whether it's in business or love.
I love the visual that comes to my mind as you say that if you leave a legacy of love,
Yeah.
it's going to last. But you're right, a trauma is remembered as well. Yeah, but okay, I know what I want my legacy to be.
Yeah, of course, you're leaving it right now in this show, right? Like there's a part of your legacy.
It is, Angela, it is. When you talked about rebranding yourself,
Yeah.
I was thinking about how I made that pivot about 8 years ago. And I said, this is what I have to do now, because I don't want to do the other. I don't want to travel around the world. I'm not interested in that anymore. I want to be able to just focus. And leave. I want people to experience me in a way that allows them to get in touch with their agency.
Well, that autonomy is so important.
It is. It is. Those women who were fawning had lost a sense of agency. That they couldn't do anything. You talked about, I think, the collaborative nature of sexual negotiation. And I'm curious, when you work in that, do you see those kinds of same skills traveling back into the business?
Yeah. So in the heart portion of my more intimacy model, which by the way, I have a complementary business. They're the same model, just different language.
Of course.
But if you think of heart as building trust, well, okay, every time I help couples communicate in a way where they understand each other and they work better together, They're building trust. Well, think of how that transfers to business. Every time you show up in your business space and you show that you're the kind of person that can be counted on, you show that you're the kind of person people want to come to. Like that's, yeah, the same skills transfer. One way I used to play around with this is that sex is a chronic condition. And you essentially have to go back to the table every time to talk and make sure that, like, it's not like, if you think of this like a sale, sex is a sale, which, I mean, just this is how closely I connect these two, right? If you try to get that quick sale, but you don't care about the business relationship, yeah, you may get the sex tonight, but you piss them off and you build resentment.
Yeah.
That same experience happens in sales and business. When somebody goes for the quick sale, like they do these, there's these finagly things where there's people kind of like, there's a quick bait and switch. I got your sale, I got your money. Well, I only need it this one time, but like you feel that resentment in your
And you
core
never go back.
and you never go back. And like I have a business that happened with me recently where I did some expo with them and I'm like, I will never work with this company again. They have lost all trust.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens in your sex life. It's the same communication skills we need to like collaborate with each other, make sure that this is a quality experience. And so I will say my business model isn't for people who just want to make money fast. I do want people to make money. Please don't mishear me there. I would like you to make good money. But essentially, it's not for business owners who want to like quickly make a business and sell it. This is for people who want to make a quality business that is linked to your identity and what you want to share with the world. And it's about showing up as a trusted business owner across multiple contexts. And there are ways like consistency, for example, when you have standard operating procedures that you follow through with, you build trust with your customer base because they're like, no, I know every time I can count on them to do these things. Or it's funny, bringing in therapy policies, right? We always believe in informed consent. Well, when you make changes in your business, which we do, we need to evolve, then you need to communicate those changes to your customers with informed consent. And so it's funny, but even in our therapy world, there's similar processes that help people say, okay, this is changing, but I have a choice here. Going back to what you said, autonomy to decide, does this new process work for me or do I need to make a different decision?
Yeah.
For me, it's not getting that quick sale. It's not tricking people into staying. It's being very transparent, very clear. Here's what it looks like. Yes, it is evolving and I need to evolve with the times, but you get to decide if this is still right for you.
Yeah. Part of this is advocating for what you want, what you need. You talk a little bit about that in your book.
Okay.
Could you say a little bit about how a person can really build and learn how to advocate for themselves?
Absolutely. I think there's a process. That's funny. I'm going to bring in some of my language from the business book. They really do cross. So in the business book, I've used language for mind called test it and do it. Test it and do it. And that's the two first chapters. Test it, do it, prove it, own it, leave it. That's the business language I use. And so it's a similar model that you use in sex therapy. But if I were to say test it and do it for sex, people are like, oh, so just do it. Well, so the test it is retraining your mind to neutralize sex and intimately connect with sex in a different way, like naturally connecting to sex. So unravel old messages that really aren't serving you. The do it part is learning to trust your body, like work with your body and its sensations so that you're actually starting to learn through trial and error. Okay, what feels good? What do I like? What do I not like? I use games actually a lot to teach people this process until over time, once they've started to do a little bit of trial and error, but like trust their body, then they can start to advocate for, I would like it to look like this or like this. And the hard thing is it's not like you can just pull somebody out of their relationship, right? And just say, okay, I'm going to put you in a corner. You just masturbate over there for a while and figure out what works. I'm just like, let's be honest. There's some nuance to helping couples work through this as a team. And so in my second book, the body book that's coming out this year, I talk about how I gamify therapy skills. Like I have a yes, no, maybe game that teaches people how to sift out and sort out some boundaries. I have eye contact games. I have like some games that are already there, like truth or dare. but that some of my trial testing and playing is getting couples trying things in safer, low-key environments. And then over time, they start to learn to say, oh, I like this. I didn't realize I like this thing. So I'm going to clock that and remember it for a future time.
Yeah.
And over time, they develop the ability to advocate for themselves based on trial and error, really.
As you're talking, I am reminded the fact that my husband and I we've been married 52 years, just to give you an idea. we worked a lot of stuff out. But we had a process
Okay.
that we encountered very early in our marriage. It's actually called Marriage Encounter.
Okay.
And it was very popular at that time, which is now 40 years ago. Not so popular today, but it was focused completely on enhancing the communication between spouses.
Okay.
And you set certain boundaries, like it had to be 10 minutes. So you didn't necessarily resolve everything, but you had a chance to explore a topic together. And we have been not just doing those things, but we have been actually participating with a small local group of people who had experienced that. And literally people that have been together 40 years, just talking about how to improve their marriage through these techniques. And by the way, there were no divorces amongst the group.
So that's a good outcome.
It is a terrific outcome. And we've lost several people from death, but that's to be expected over a number of years. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking what an advantage we had that we just fell into. We didn't anticipate that.
Absolutely. Well, and even what you mentioned there, just time frames. Why I love the game Truth or Dare is usually when you ask somebody a question or a dare, it's only about a minute. It's usually about a minute that you're committing to. It's easier for people to do a little trial and error through a minute intimate act.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of time-based, let's make this small. Let's try a massage experience, but let's shorten it and give you an opportunity to experience this in your body and learn what you like. Because that's the part that's challenging, right? So in the first book, I focus on the mind, and it is a good start, but you can read about riding a bike and you can look at pictures and watch other people do it, but it's a different experience when you hop on that bike and figure it out in your own body. And one thing I write about in this next book is that there was this old belief that to teach people to swim, you just throw them in the water and they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say some people didn't learn how to swim, because they did. But a lot of people either learned how to swim but are terrified of the water as a result, or avoid it altogether. A lot of people don't swim at all because there's trauma associated with almost drowning. And then there is a subset of people that are those go-getters that are like, I figured out how to swim and I learned I can handle a stressful situation. And that's great. But it wasn't the most effective method for every personality type. So what I am doing by developing these systems for different personality types and neurodivergence really is I'm learning how to teach each sexual health skill or business health skill so that it actually matches the people that I'm trying to support.
Marvelous. That's marvelous. And I am impressed that you have a variety of, as you call them, games. I think it is so easy when you're in the consulting world to have your favorite and always call upon your favorite, when in fact the group really may need a different approach.
Well, let's bring this into business for a moment. So the more business language I use is test it, do it, prove it, own it, leave it, which is mind, body, heart, soul, spirit. Okay. And what ends up happening with business owners is they actually are very good at test it, do it, prove it. They've done different systems. And now I haven't gone deep into all of the things I teach in each of those, but you can kind of intuit, right? Okay, do some testing. Then you got to throw yourself in and figure some things out. And then over time, you hone it and shape it until you've proved to yourself in business, I can do that. I trust myself as a business owner. But here's what most business owners don't realize. They learned one method. That's great. There's multiple methods to running a business. And what ends up happening is it works for a time. And it can, right? Like I actually, in my own business, I've developed a method that I proved that worked for a time until it didn't. In fact, until 2020 hit, right? And the pandemic changed everything.
Yes.
So what ends up happening is, if you think of it like a marriage, business like a marriage, your people who are really good at a honeymoon phase will get through the test it, do it, prove it, and then sell it after the business needs to go beyond the honeymoon phase. And so they're great at making money. Good for them. Like, I'm not here
Yeah.
to judge that process, but to really make a business that lasts, there's different skill sets to like evolve over time that you probably learned in marriage, Madeline. Like, as you think about like all the, I had to evolve over 50 years. You've been through several financial downturns. Right? Like, think of it. How have you had to evolve in your business to make it effective through all of these life experiences?
Mm-hmm. Well, as we're sitting here talking about that, I'm thinking, what were some of the things? Now, I told you about marriage encounter, which is kind of formal,
Sure.
but we had another thing that we used to do. Well, actually, several things.
Okay.
One is that we had a beautiful view from our backyard. We're in the mountains of Maryland, which
Okay.
I know the Westerners don't think they're mountains, and okay, I understand they're just hills, but still, they're our mountains. And at night, when the sun was setting, you could look in the sky and you'd see clouds, right?
Mhm.
Oh, my husband and I would sit on this bench and we would say what clouds we were, what did we see in the clouds? And it just gave us something that we could talk about. It
Mm.
had nothing to do with everyday problems or anything like that. It was just, there's a duck over there. Do you see the duck? And it was just a time when we could communicate. So that was something that we did that without any intention became a bonding, and it did build trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've had to evolve across time in multiple contexts.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine both your marriage and your business has had to evolve.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And so one thing I'm teaching people with my model is how to evolve with the times.
Yeah.
Um, an actual method for how to get through it so that it doesn't feel so terrifying, which from some of my own grueling experience, because like I said, I've been through 3 economic downturns actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched couples, like if you think of it, so it's a parallel model, right? Couples have to evolve in their marriage, just like business owners have to
Yes.
evolve in their business. And so what I'm essentially teaching people is how to create an experience and adjust the way things are going so that it works with who you are now and then even who you're going to be. Because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to change. We all change. This is life.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Some of us, I think, like you said, Madeline, you kind of come on these almost accidentally, right? Where you're like, oh, this helps us talk and connect and build
Right.
trust. What I want to do is take some of the accidents out and give people very intentional ways to
Beautiful.
build those relationships.
Beautiful. I'm really, I sensed that you had a real message to give, which is why I invited you to the show. And I just am, I always get excited when I say, "Oh, Madeline, you did a good job."
Thank you for having me and listening. I appreciate it.
Well,
Well, Madeline, what's funny is people think sex therapy and there's a way that people are like, oh, what, like you can dismiss.
yeah,
But I think some of the hardest lessons have been learned by walking couples through the most vulnerable taboo topic.
absolutely, absolutely. There's no question, no question
Thank
about
you
that.
for taking a chance on me.
I am a risk taker. I am.
Funnest type.
There's one other area that you talk about,
Okay.
and I'd like you to expand on. Uh, I I'm a sociologist. I'm actually not a psychologist, a
Oh,
sociologist,
okay.
and I know a great deal about the relationships. In fact, that's what you do. You look at the relationships between people, and you're working on that. And that's why I think, a fairly good consultant because I was looking at how the groups work together
Mm.
and individuals. But you talk about not just emotional intelligence. You talk about erotic intelligence. Talk about that. What is that?
Erotic intelligence stems from emotional intelligence, but it's your ability to take in new information and apply it in your life and apply it to communication skills. So going back to advocating for yourself, it's the ability to experiment, to try new things, to explore new things, but to know your body well enough to walk yourself through that experimentation.
Yes.
And going back to some of the personality types that I work with, different bodies need different approaches. We can't all be thrown into the deep end in the water and succeed, right? So your risk takers like you, Miss Madeline, or Dr. Madeline, can be thrown into the deep end. And yeah, it's going to be a little scary, but you're going to figure it out. You're going to get in there. Well, that's great for you. But there's a lot of other people who are like, I'm just going to drown and sink to the
Yeah,
bottom of
yeah,
the
yeah,
water.
yeah,
And so, erotic intelligence is someone's ability to know themselves and their bodies. Going back to what you said, we'll go full circle to the beginning.
yeah.
Except this is who I am. This is how I work, and I can still grow. I liken it to a poker game. Like if we're all sitting around playing poker, everybody's been given a hand they've been dealt, and your genetics are the hand. Your behaviors are your ability to play that hand to the best of your ability. We can all play poker, but you do got to learn some bluffing skill if you've only got a couple of twos.
That's right.
Intimidation skills. No, I don't want
That's
to
right.
teach
That's right.
intimidation, but you know what I mean? Like,
I
if you're
do. I do. I do. My husband plays chess.
ah,
so so he is master at all this.
yeah, there's more to the game than your hand,
That's right.
right?
That's right. I have one last question for you. You call your website Open Bedroom Doors, and your show is called that too.
Yeah.
How did you come upon that name?
That's a great, thank you. I was at a business conference and they were saying, describe your business in 5 words or less. It was a marketing training. And I had no idea. I was like, I don't know. But I had chatted up with the people at the table. And somebody was like, Angela, I think you should try I Open Bedroom Doors. I think that like is a good one for you. So it wasn't me. It was some lady at this business table. And I was like, I don't know. Let's test it. So the guy, after we had some time to brainstorm with each other, asked, who's willing to share their tagline? And I was like, right here, let's try it. But that's all they asked is, what's your tagline that you came up with? So I said, he calls me. He's like, what's your tagline? I say, I open bedroom doors. The crowd kind of like, oh, that's weird. What's going on? You know, you could feel that energy. I feel energy in rooms. And so he's like, that's an interesting one. Okay. What do you do? And then I said, I'm a sex therapist, and the whole room roared like, whoa! And some guy randomly comes up with the camera and clicks, like whoever was there for the media. And I was like, I guess that's a winner. What's funny though, Madeline, is that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, that happened. And I would kind of playfully say I open bedroom doors here and there, but I never owned it until I rebranded. And that's why I call it the soul of my business, because it's when I really identified and leaned into this is who I am that I then started saying open bedroom doors. And it's funny how many doors that rebrand has opened for me in real time.
Fabulous. Angela Skurtu, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure here too.
Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. When I asked Angela to be a guest on my show, I did so because she brought such energy and lightness as she talked about a subject that often carries perverse messages. You already noticed that she really is light and energy. Her messages are never perverse, but given what it didn't do, I then shifted my thinking to what it did focus on. And the first thing that popped in my mind was acceptance. You know, that word acceptance is so powerful. My husband and I have been married for 52 years. We have spent conscious time doing things to assure that we were reinforcing each other and our marriage commitments. Those commitments were captured in Khalil Gibran's poem on marriage, which includes, give your hearts but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, where the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. The poem is about intimacy without possession, yet being strengthened by companionship as each remains fully themselves. To me, that is one of the best descriptions of acceptance and the inherent value embedded within it. When you accept another, it is a statement also that the other may remain uniquely themselves, just as you may remain uniquely yourself. Acceptance can seem weak and submissive, lacking in any force, and yet it is the opposite, as it actually feeds what is being accepted through that acceptance. It's powerful at any time, at any age, in any form. For example, teenagers often experiment with their hair. It can become a real frustration for parents who have a sense of propriety and style. Yet through acceptance, their teenager is affirmed without judgment so that the teenager can then spend their energy on deciding what next to do with their hair, which might include adopting the style of their parents. There is no lost energy on either side. When tattoos became more and more popular, I, for one, at first found them repulsive. That came from growing up being taught that my body was a temple and should never be defaced. I wasn't allowed to write on my body as a child, for example. I was expected to care for my body and clothe it as well as I could as I grew up. I finally remembered that accepting the tattoos of others didn't change me and might actually help them, as they didn't have to see my dislike. As I thought about this, it was freeing. I found myself seeing tattoos as art that people were choosing to adorn themselves. Acceptance had an influence on me as well. The key began to reveal itself. Acceptance frees us to think differently. It doesn't suggest that acceptance means the other's actions are good. They simply mean I am free to choose, and so are they. When my husband and I chose Gibran's poem as part of our marriage celebration, I, for one, never imagined the exquisite power it had to allow each of us to become who we were without ever feeling that the other was becoming less, simply because they were becoming different. It allowed us to accept each other's foibles and disagreeable habits. That didn't mean that we didn't talk about them, but discussing them in order to change the other was not the purpose. Rather, it was to inform the other of the impact they had on us, and the choice remained theirs, to change or not. So many people begin a relationship with the idea that they will change the other person. And if you do this, and even to the point of convincing them to change, you've lost the game. They now feel a sense of powerlessness, which can creep into other areas of their lives. Former strengths wither, and they become less. My advice is always that if the relationship is at its beginning, then you must consider that if something is so unpleasant to you that you decide to change the other person, it is far better to simply remove yourself from the relationship. Then you reinforce your own sense of agency, and you leave theirs intact as well. Acceptance, such a magic key. Where in your life, personal or professional, might acceptance free you? I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope this conversation has offered not just new ideas, but a different way of noticing, one that restores attention and connection. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock your resilient leader.